Hello, welcome to Wonderslut. This is Rebecca Crosby. It is a beautiful day and just feeling so full of just joy and happiness. And I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. Her name is Jaime Fisher. I am waiting in the studio for her to get on here. So I'm just going to babble until she's here. Big shout out to my sponsors. If it's on your heart to sponsor, I am open to discussing what that looks like. I'm a little particular about who sponsors because I need, it's important to me that things align and that it's beneficial to our higher selves to join in partnering up with each other. And I think because it is a global podcast and I've got a following in South Africa of all places, shout out to my South African friends. It's probably best if you have like an online presence. So if you do any virtual appointments, Reiki, quantum healing, anything like that, this would be a good fit. Any online therapy, retail stores, but they have to be, globally conscious products. Not really interested in raping the environment. So anything along those lines, reach out to me for sponsorships. My viewership is about 20,000 and growing. I do have a large group of people in Texas because that's where I'm from. So, if you are a statewide company, roofing company, something like that, and you feel the need to support a platform that is helping us think through difficult things with love and compassion for ourselves and other people, then great, reach out to me. I would love it. We are continuously growing and expanding our mission and trying to stay centered in a world that is very interested in throwing you off course, making you focus on things that are just basic and boring, like money and power and position and success, according to the American term of success. And I'm more interested in heart-centered living, and that's a precarious position to be in when there's not a lot of support. So, that's what we're doing here, walking through issues that are interesting and complex and challenging, and encouraging women to find their voice and not be afraid to use it. That's my goal. So I'd love to meet you, hang out with you. We can dissect some interesting topics and, maybe move forward in a different way through life that is more expansive and kind and love and heart-centered. Or raising our vibration so that we are productive in the spiritual sense of the word. My favorite thing about what is happening with the age of technology and information and medicine is that the spiritual realm is being considered and actually has taken front and center in a lot of conversations. And it just thrills me to no end that higher consciousness is what is now being thrown into the mix. How you can best serve your higher self in a way that also serves the rest of humanity and not in this power, hierarchical, patriarchal structure. Instead, it's what is good for me is also good for others. Do no harm, lead with love, and caretake your own emotions. You have a responsibility as a human being to yourself and to other people to be the best version of yourself that you can. It's real important to me. And I don't think that that's a thing for a lot of people, but it is a thing for me. And I want to be a platform that encourages women and men to embrace who they are, whatever that looks like, in all their weird glory, all the dichotomies of being a human being and holding multiple opposing ideas and feelings simultaneously in your body, and not combusting because you are working on maintaining a solid nervous system that's not wrecked. And you spend time in meditation because you know that that is the way forward, and checking out of systems and duties and obligations to other people that do not serve you anymore or that aren't assisting you on your greater path of becoming. And it's a fascinating journey, isn't it? People are so different, and I love it so much. And, being a woman who has a particular set of skills doesn't make me any more important or significant to the story just because I use my voice, which is, how most of us communicate is by listening and speaking, to get us to where closer to who we are meant to be. Doesn't mean that you don't also have a role and an obligation to fill. And I do think that when you hoard your gifts, you are doing a great disservice to yourself and to other people. We were meant to use our gifts to increase abundance and to increase the purpose of humanity. And if there's anything about your life that is meant to be shared and you don't share it, you're like the highest form of selfish there is. I really like that framework better than the other kind that we have previously thought if you take care of yourself, you're selfish. I don't like that narrative. In fact, that feels real gross to me. And my guest is here. Hello.
Move around a couple of things, but I figured it out.
You're beautiful.
Oh, thank you. You too. So I'm just getting some better lighting here. Let's
Okay.
see. We'll see. Okay. All right. Maybe better. Maybe not. How are
Okay.
you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Well, I'm under the weather, but I'm excited that like technology has allowed us all to like, I can still meet with you because
I
I have a
know.
fever, but it doesn't matter because I can sit down and chat.
Oh my gosh. You have a fever. Okay. Well, we're already recording if that's okay with you.
Oh,
That's just
that's
like,
totally fine. Yeah. No, no. Um, if I stopped every time something went weird in my life, I would never go anywhere in life. I swear.
there.
There's
And
always something. There literally is always something in life that comes up for us. My husband and I often laugh about that.
I totally feel that. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, introduce yourself in whatever way feels good to you.
Yeah, my name is Jaime Fisher. I am right now a full-time content creator, kind of a public thinker and thought leader in the spaces of like marriage, family, and motherhood rights. I am let's see, we have 4 kids. My husband and I are married. We've been married for over 20 years. We have 4 kids. They're all almost teenagers. We have a 11, 14, 15, and 17-year-old. So we're just about to enter the phase where our first one's leaving the nest here in about 6 months, which is very weird. Yeah. And I've done a little bit of everything. I'm kind of a jack of all trades, maybe a Renaissance woman. Maybe I like to think of it that way. Most days I don't think of it that way. Most days I have trouble conjuring up grace for myself with how my career path has gone, but it's been varied. Let's just put it that way.
Okay. I love this so much. My previous company was called Jill of All Trades. So I consider
Really?
myself to be the
Oh
same.
my
Yes.
goodness.
Okay. So you're a motherhood rights. I mean, so many things, but tell me about that. What does that look
Yeah.
like?
So, I mean, if you were only in online spaces, you would think that men and women hated each other and that we're in an all out gender war where it will be winners takes all, right? We're going to just keep shooting at each other. And I don't believe we're in a war. I think we're in a reconciliation. And a reconciliation sometimes can be just as painful because you're navigating so much new territory. And when you've had this much disequity, like enshrined in all of our systems and still in our systems, there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of heartache and there's a lot of suffering needlessly, but nevertheless it's there. And so in terms of motherhood rights, I am a huge advocate of paid family leave. I'm a huge advocate of universal basic income for caregivers. I'm a huge advocate for laws and rights that protect workers who want to keep their full benefits and even half their wages, but work part-time. These all sound like outrageous ideas, but I could give you a list of 20 countries that already have what I just said enshrined into their laws. I'm a big fan of
Yes.
and an advocate for subsidized childcare, high quality childcare, and revamping our understanding of what children need and how children are integrated into our society. It wasn't women that said that the presence of children is unprofessional in a work environment. And if you think about most work environments, the idea that somehow children should always be separate from those places. And if children are present, somehow it's an unprofessional setting, that children need to be sequestered from everything we do in adult life. That wasn't a woman's idea. That's a man's idea. And it has actually deteriorated society immensely. So once again, I'm an advocate for including children in our workplaces. And I know that's real. When people hear that, their heads start to spin like, ah!
Radical.
And certainly there are cases like, police officers shouldn't bring their children to work. Surgeons can't bring their children to work. But the number of people who are surgeons and police officers or work on oil rigs is like the minority. Most of us are doing something where if I had an infant right now that was 10 weeks old, I don't know if you know much about a 10-week old, but it sleeps most of the day. It could be wrapped around me and I could be responding to emails. Or if I just recently worked in a job where it was an environment where it was a small business and the husband and wife couple that owned the business from the very first time they had their baby just created a playroom in our office. And as they added employees, if you had a kid, it wasn't like the type of thing where they're like, yeah, bring your kid with you to work every day. It's free babysitting. But they were like, no, if you're in a pinch or things are weird or your kid's just going through a needy day, bring your kid to work. We don't want your children ever feel excluded, which is the type of flexibility you have in a small business. And the coolest part about our business was like we had employees, and it was one of the delights of all of our souls, men, women, everyone that worked there, to be on duty. Like, hey, the kids are getting rowdy back there. Can you go be on kid duty for an hour? And all of us were like, yay, I get to go color. Like all the adults, it was like a joy. And we're one of the most productive businesses in our industry. We receive accolades region wide. We have one of the smallest workforces for our industry, but have some of the highest level of business outcomes and productivity. So people might say, oh, if that's happening, if someone's going to take care of the kids, it's less productive. It's like all the things people say actually turn out to be untrue. It's when people are comfortable, when people feel safe, when people know their children are cared for, they perform better, which is crazy that we have to say that out loud. So that's what I mean by like women's rights and advocating for a better.
Okay. I love this so much. So I had when I was a business owner in New Orleans, I employed mostly single mothers. So they would bring their kids to work sometimes. And the office became like a space of, kids were there sometimes. And it was like a communal issue. If you want to work, you have an obligation. And also I was thinking through, have you ever read that book? I cannot remember the name of it right now, but she was an NPR researcher. And when she had a baby, she was like, I'm a brilliant woman, but I cannot navigate motherhood. I don't understand how to do it. So she took her daughter and traveled to different villages to find out how they raised their children. And she discovered that they were incorporated into every part of life.
Yes.
They had a job from the time they were able to do anything. They were a necessary part of functioning. And I'm like, that makes total sense to me. But it is not supported. I get so much pushback for the kind of mother that I am. And so much. It's not supported.
The crazy part is what you just mentioned is so critical. I was talking from the parents, the productivity of parents, but this is actually categorically and been studied to be better for children as well. We kind of, in society, we do all this. So I have 4 teenagers and I love my kids, and my kids they're thriving. They're really doing well, but I have some very unique parenting approaches that honestly would be kind of like looked down on in the current society we've built, because I have included my kids every step of the way. I've included my kids when I've attended a protest. oh, it's dangerous, don't get your kids. I'm like, no, I want my children to see the country they live in and what it looks like
Absolutely.
when the police misbehave. I don't want my children for 1 second to believe a lie about where they live. I'm okay with them being
Absolutely.
exposed to some realities. Now, granted, I didn't do that as babies. Although we did bring them to protest as babies, we just did it at ones we knew would be were safe, or they were more like activism that was, we knew for sure would be peaceful. I've included my kids in a lot of things. People are like, oh, no, children shouldn't be doing that. And I was like, oh, yes, they should. And this idea that like, back in my day, kids were so capable. Like, yeah, back in your day, we gave children the developmentally appropriate opportunities to be included in what goes on in a real society. And what we have now completely eliminated that. We have sequestered children to preschool,
Yes.
daycare,
Yes.
elementary school, middle school, high school, and then we drop them in the real world at 18 and are just, we're befuddled that they're not thriving.
Yep.
And I'm like,
Yep.
this is not rocket science. It's what we're doing is developmentally odd. And it's just as you said, when we study historical humanity, we know this is never how humans have behaved in history. Children were always
No.
valued, connected members to the community who were, at
Yep.
different points, asked to start taking ownership of tasks from very early ages, in fact. Now, of course, I didn't do those things
Yes.
perfectly, but you never get a child, I mean, as a simple thing, like who can crack an egg well, who didn't first crack an egg in a really messy way the first 20 times. And the thing is, all of
Yes.
us remember that. I remember being a bad
Yes.
baker. My first time I tried to bake a
Yes.
batch of cookies, I was like, oh no, they came out flat. Or, oh no, they don't taste right. Oh, I added salt and I thought it was baking powder, but I realized I put 3 tablespoons of salt instead of only 1. You know what I mean? You have to learn that the hard way. And we've eliminated
Trial and error.
the learn the hard way for children. Or human beings are a watch and learn species. The young learn by watching the older. And in fact, we're actually watch and learn adult to adult as well, but we like to pretend like we're not. And we've eliminated the opportunity for children to watch the culture, to watch how adults do things, because we're sequestering children from the day-to-day life of adults and activities that humans need. And then we get pissed. Kids these days, they're just terrible. I was like, who set up the system? It's adults. We set up that system.
Right. Right. And I would love to hear your thoughts about this, but I do think it's because there was like fear instilled in us when children started going missing. The news didn't help it, so they felt like it was this rampant problem. So then they like kept their children at home like they were prized possessions, right? Priceless, and they needed to protect them from everyone. And when really the reality is that sure, that shit happens, but it's not as rampant as the news wants you to believe. So we're just like living in this fear state of what's going to happen, what could happen. And it's kind of bounced back on us. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I actually think it starts a little bit different, but I agree that like overprotective, precious view of childhood is standing in our way. But I actually think the origin story of that idea comes from 2 different places. Number one, I don't know if you know this, but the federal laws that prohibited women from being in the workforce were never on the books until in the mid 1940s. The president of the United States at the time, and this was mind-blowing to me when I visited the World War II Museum in Louisiana. It's in New Orleans. This was one of the most fascinating pieces of me. It was all the labor laws that went into effect right as World War II was ending. And the reason that happened is because leaders in our country became concerned. Women had gone into the workforce in droves. And not only was that going well, it was going exceptionally. And once again, factories, all kinds of places of employment, kind of like we did in COVID. You know how we instantly innovated in COVID? The Zoom call we're having. We may not have had this before COVID. Yep. You being a podcaster, yep. You might have thought you were limited to only the people who you lived near. But here we are thousands of miles away having a podcast. World War II was very similar. We had an extraordinary amount of innovation all at once. And one of the innovations that happened all at once was that places of work became places where children were allowed to be. They dedicated a room for children, and older children, and some of the moms would take turns overseeing the younger children, and then women and the children would go home at the end of the day. Women entered the workforce in droves, and it was hunky freaking dory. It actually wasn't a problem, which scaled a lot of male leaders. And the reason it scared them, and if you they actually outline this in the World War II Museum, the president at the time is fearful that men coming home from war won't feel valued or appreciated if there isn't an immediate spot for them to plug into the workforce. And the other fear they had was that young men who may be idle could become a violent problem for America, which this is interesting that was their thinking. And so they literally begin to approach the corporate leaders of the time, the Vanderbilts. They begin to pull those types of industry and corporate leaders in and say, hey, we're going to make these federal laws, but really, if we're going to enforce it, it's going to need to be your corporate policy for you to forbid women from your factory floors and you to forbid women. So in exchange, the government said, we will give you subsidies and we will ramp up including veterans into workplaces as long as you promise to fire the women and make sure they can't come here. And so what you have is this mass exodus of women because they're being fired, not because they chose to leave. And you have this massive public policy shift. But in order for the public policy shift to work, you needed a pretty good PR campaign because women remembered. Women are like, you can't convince us that this didn't go well. We saw it with our own eyes. It was going great. And the satisfaction in women's lives at that time, if you look at some of the ways we were inventorying happiness and other things, women were actually really pleased. They had a high level of satisfaction because some of them, for the first time in their lives, were controlling their financial autonomy exclusively. They had never done that before. Their husband was at war and they're in charge of their money and their time. And they love it. And they're doing well with it. My own grandmother describes the happiest part of her life was the 4 years before she got married, where she worked for the phone company and lived with a group of girlfriends. She controlled her own finances. And she said, I wish I never got married. I loved that period of my life, but I was told being married would make me happier. So then I went and did it and it did not. Anyway, back to the World War II. So we have that World War II. We actually have an intensive propaganda campaign. It's the first time you see massive messages of like, okay, ladies, make your husband happy at home. Oh, to be a good woman means that you are with your babies. Oh, the happiest thing I could be as a woman is with my children. You don't see that type of messaging pre-World War II. That is not a thing, only because you wouldn't have need to say that. We had mostly pre the Industrial Revolution, we had an agrarian society where everyone was with their children all day. Like you on a farm, you didn't like be like, okay, kids, go to the daycare of the farm. Like, no. Your children came out with you in the fields. Your children learned how to go find the eggs in the chicken coop. Your children learned how to, till the fields or whatever. The children were right alongside of you, men and women. And then if you look even further in society, in hunter-gatherer societies, literally children are never, there's a ratio of something like 5 to 1 adults. I forget the exact ratio, but there's basically always more adults than kids. And during the day, a child is only being held by their mother about 30% of the time. And for young children, that's only when they're nursing. The rest of the time, a very young baby would have been held by other members of the community. A mother, it wasn't considered solely a mother's job. But here you have post-World War II. We're literally inventing a new way to live. Humans have never lived this way before. It's actually odd. It would have been considered, if you had shown the 1950s housewife to any human 100 or 200 or 300 years before, they would have been like, what the heck are you doing? Isolating children with one adult, that's so bizarre. We don't, that's weird. And it is weird. And it only kind of looked like it worked because we also had an economic public policy of the time. If you understand what the marginal tax rate was, we were taking so much money from the rich and reinvesting in the middle class. People like to say, make America great again. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's take money from the rich and reinvent the middle class. It is the time of the strongest labor unions. It is the time of the most investment in infrastructure. It's one of the times of most innovation. But we have between a 70 and 90% marginal tax rate. That means anyone at the time in the 1950s who made over $250,000, all of that money above 250 was taxed at a 90% rate. You didn't take those dollars home if you were a mogul, or that money went back into the community. It went back into subsidizing the highway programs, the trains we have. It went back 5 to 1 adults. I forget the exact ratio, but there's basically always more adults than kids. And during the day, a child is only being held by their mother about 30% of the time. And for young children, that's only when they're nursing. The rest of the time, a very young baby would have been held by other members of the community. A mother, it wasn't considered solely a mother's job. But here you have post-World War II. We're literally inventing a new way to live. Humans have never lived this way before. It's actually odd. It would have been considered, if you had shown the 1950s housewife to any human 100 or 200 or 300 years before, they would have been like, what the heck are you doing? Isolating children with one adult, that's so bizarre. We don't, that's weird. And it is weird. And it only kind of looked like it worked because we also had an economic public policy of the time. If you understand what the marginal tax rate was, we were taking so much money from the rich and reinvesting in the middle class. People like to say, make America great again. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's take money from the rich and reinvent the middle class. It It is the time of the strongest labor unions. It is the time of the most investment in infrastructure. It's one of the times of most innovation. But we have between a 70 and 90% marginal tax rate. That means anyone at the time in the 1950s who made over $250,000, all of that money above 250 was taxed at a 90% rate. You didn't take those dollars home if you were a mogul, or that money went back into the community. It went back into subsidizing the highway programs, the trains we have. It went back into subsidizing public parks, all kinds of scientific research that the government used to take on more readily. Anyway, so we have that like propaganda, and we tell women it's their job, and it becomes quite normal, and it goes kind of okay. I mean, if you look at what women were doing back then, they have high rates of suicide, like the amount of barbiturates and other very major psychotropic drugs women are being prescribed just to deal with the isolation and crazy making. It's not natural for a woman to be alone with her children 100% of the time. That's actually wildly unnatural. But women are having to cope with that new reality. And so if you look at all of that, the amount of women who are being institutionalized or even lobotomized because they're just hysterical, women are just going through hysterics. It's a terrible time for women if you really understand what's going on in the lives of women. And also if you've really ever talked to your grandmothers. People like to ice it over, oh, my grandmother loved everything she did. Well, yeah, I would say about maybe 4 in 10 grandmothers I've ever talked to loved every minute of it. Another 3 liked motherhood, but are quite resentful about their financial situation. And the last portion literally hated it. Like this idea that every woman just loved it is a fiction that mostly men invent to make themselves feel better about a really oppressive system. Okay, so then what happens, back to your idea of this like protectiveness, women become the sole care providers of children for the first time in world history. This has never been done before. And there becomes this overarching narrative that if something bad happens to the child, what was mom doing? What was mom doing? What was she doing? Oh, that mother, she wasn't doing it right, right? We have a sense of hyper-individualism.
Yep.
And that hyper-individualism gets placed on almost exclusively mother alone.
Yep.
So then you have mothers who are responding to a cultural incentive and heaps of shame that if they step out of bounds or out of line and something horrific happens to their child, not only do they experience the horror of a trauma that happens to a child, say abduction, or even, kids getting hit by a car on their bike. Kids used to be able to bike everywhere, right? My mom walked to school 3 times a day. She walked back. She walked home for lunch. As a 5-year-old, walked a mile each way. And we let children do that back then. No problem. You would have never blamed the parents because even then we still had the historical and collective narrative that children belong to the community. It's still the historic idea is that children are the community's responsibility. So 1950s housewives aren't dealing with an individualistic culture that exclusively blames them for what happens to kids. If a kid gets hit by a bike, it's first of all just known that like, oh my gosh, tragedy happens. But number 2, how fast was that car going? Like what else was going on? Like we look at all the factors. But in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, you have a rise in news media sensationalizing tragedy because they're making money off of it. And you have these abductions, and then you have this other hyperfixation. It is indeed like, what were the parents doing? What were the parents doing? But really, if we're honest, it's what was mom doing, right? Because raising children has become solely a mother's responsibility. It's the weight is on a woman. And so what you have is mothers respond to that. I mean, just now in my own community, it happened a couple months ago where I was behind what ended up being a fatal car accident. I was stuck in traffic in my own town. And later on in a Facebook group, I went online to see our neighborhood forums, the town forums, what's going on. It's a tight-knit community. I thought whoever's in that car accident, I might know them. I didn't know them directly, but I had lots of people who did. What ended up happening was a mother was driving, and she was T-boned by an SUV. She was in a small sedan. She was T-boned. The truck that hit her was going 70 miles an hour. And 2 of her kids were ejected from the vehicle. 1 died on the scene, and the other will live with permanent disability. So this mother not only experienced, and the T-bone happened at the rear of the vehicle where the passengers were sitting, her children. And I got on this forum and I saw that there was an accident. I saw that a 2-year-old died and a 7-year-old is paralyzed. And it's hundreds of vitriolic. I could cry just thinking about it, like so hateful. What was that mom doing? Why didn't she buckle the car seats in right? If parents just took responsibility, her children would be fine. Oh God, the hate is unspeakable. And this mother, mind you, the 2-year-old was still alive right after the accident. The mother had to go out of the car where the child had been thrown 100 feet from the vehicle and hold her baby as it died. Like, that's what this mother had just experienced, one of the most violent forms of loss, in the world that ever happens to people. It wasn't until a paramedic, a firefighter, I should say, from the scene of that accident came into the forum and said, just so you know, I've been a first responder for 30 years. And this is the most violent accident I've ever responded to. And just so you know, seatbelts are made to resist and create safety in front to back crashes, not T-bone accidents. This mother could have done every single thing right and it wouldn't have mattered, because the person driving the other vehicle was doing something so wildly reckless. She's just lucky that the other two, that herself and the other two kids are alive. It was such a violent accident, and this mother did nothing wrong. And of course, we didn't have hundreds of apologies to that mom. We didn't all collectively be like, oh, so sorry, mom, right? Everyone felt vindicated until someone came on that forum and said, y'all need to shut it. And the thing is, we tolerate that level of individualistic harm toward parents, especially mothers.
I love it, but I'm crying because that happened to me.
That toward mothers, right? I think it's because
my son was in a
at our basis a misogynistic country. If
so
hate comes toward women, we're kind of like, well, that just happens to women. Like, we don't think we should correct it.
He drowned.
But women have responded, right? They're doing everything to keep their babies safe in a physical way. Because what kind of horror can you imagine?
Baby go home with his
mother. Something terrible happens to your kid, and then you have to experience the additional horror of an entire community of people who should love you, people who should hold you, people who should come to your aid, people who should walk you through tragedy, which is your community, are now throwing you under the bus. It is one of the most horrific rippings of social fabric that we tolerate, and it has created a sick society. But we're all culpable. We are mutually co-creating that terrible environment. And so those are the two things, this like transition post World War II to mom carries it all. And then the subsequent societal transition, individualism has fully taken hold. We no longer think we're responsible for one another. And now blame falls fully to mom and dad.
He's here. He shouldn't be here, but he's here.
And so you have this parenting response where parenting is going in a very unhealthy direction, but we are all co-creating that environment. We can all choose to change that if we want to. Anyway, that was too long. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Right.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that, Rebekah. Yep. Oh, Rebekah, I'm so sorry.
Yep.
Rebekah, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Genuine, I wish I could hug you. Sure. I wish I could hug you. And here's the funny part about this, what's happening on this podcast right now. Like, any woman who sees it would like just rally around and grab us and hug us, right? Because there's so many women who have had this experience. There's so many women who toil in isolation with the tragedy of holding the world together. But we'd come to each other. But you'd never see this active emotion on a male podcast because most men aren't even taking care of their kids. And we don't blame men at the end of that, right? We don't tend to hold men accountable. Like, where was dad when this kid drowned, right? I'm so sorry, Rebekah. That is unspeakable, and you never should carry that. I'm so sorry. And that happens to me. I have a community pool in my neighborhood, and it's like a neighborhood one. Like, there's like I live in a neighborhood with an HOA.
Yeah.
And it happens at least twice a summer where I jump in the pool fully clothed to pull a kid out who's struggling. And never once have I ever said, where's the parent? Only because I have 4 fucking kids, and I am totally aware that you can turn around.
You're fucking amazing. I'm just like eating this up. Like, oh my God, this woman is amazing. I feel like I've been
turn like an instant. And I never think
like a lunatic
that kid wasn't my responsibility. I'm there too. I have eyeballs on the pole too. As soon as I see it happening, I'm like, no.
We're dealing
this baby
with
is also my responsibility. His safety, her safety. They're mine.
Values.
I never think, where was mom? I never think. And then I sit there with that kid. I was a swim instructor for years and years. I'm already wet. I'm in my clothes. We might as well laugh about it. usually I try to make that kid feel better. And then I was very familiar on water safety. I'm like, hey, do you want to learn how to be super safe in the water like a superhero? I usually just take the opportunity to be like, I'm part of your community. I don't have to wait for mom or dad to teach you this. I also live in a low income community where a lot of people cannot afford
Oh, I love
swim
it.
lessons. A lot of people, a lot of parents, both of them are working low income jobs just to make ends meet, and there's not time. Like in a white upper middle class family, we have time devoted to like Saturday morning swim lessons and running our kids to all these events. I don't live in that kind of community. I'm probably one of the
Yep.
most well off in my community that could do those things, and I understand parents are dealing with a different level of bandwidth. But we also have almost no discussion about that either. The idea that parents should
Yep.
parent at a certain level that gets their kids to a full level of adulthood,
Well, it's by
and we give them very little bandwidth with which to do that. I could also go off on a whole thing about that, but I'm so sorry, Rebekah. That should never have happened.
right, right. Yes. I agree with that, and I think it's just a programming, it's what they've been taught, it's who they are, it's how they lived, and they've been supported in that thinking, and you can find plenty of support for believing that you hold the key to the kingdom, right? As a
And
patriarchal
it
man that
makes me
has
so
no
sad.
responsibility aside from
Well,
working
I
and
look
being a
at what's
man.
happening between men
That's
and women
enough,
now, and
and
I
it's
know many
so
many
sad.
extraordinary men. The men that I currently have in my
Yes,
life, I would say the
yes.
curated set of men.
And
If every
I know
man was
that
like
men
the men
don't
I am
agree with
friends
that.
with, or
I
like
know
my
that they
partner, or
feel
like his friends,
slighted, that they feel
war
like
would
they
end
struggle also.
instantly. We would be
I've heard
collectively
them
working
say
on
that.
climate change. There'd
And
be no child in
also,
poverty. Like if I could just clone the men I know,
sure, sure.
we would instantly have a world that
But
was
their
literally the most beautiful
responsibility
place on
to their
earth.
community
Unfortunately, the men I know, I think, are the
is
minority
not
of men,
there. Like they're
and we
totally
do not
lacking
have. We have
that
men are in
feeling
most of
of
the public
caring for
policy
other
decision making
people. Like
places.
if you
They're in
had,
most of the corporate boards. They
there's
hold
that
most of the
meme that
wealth,
all the monkeys
and
that
they are
hoard the
not
bananas,
thinking
like we
about
would study
this
the
community
monkeys that were
minded,
hoarding bananas while other
belonging
monkeys
to
were
one another,
starving. But we
social
don't
fabric
do that
living life. Men are
to men
not
now,
thinking
and
that way, and
they just sit on
it's
their
destroying the
riches,
world. It's destroying
and
people, and it's
they
destroying the planet.
pat themselves on the
And
back
people
for
will
the
say, like,
little
that's
that they
harsh.
do
They'll say,
give.
like,
If
oh,
they
you're starting
let
a gender
someone
war. It's
borrow
not
a
just
hundred
men, or it's not
dollars
all
it's
men. I
like
know it's
this,
not just men. I know it's
oh,
not
I'm
all men,
such
but
a
it is
great
a
human, and
very
it's
significant portion. And it just
so
turns out we
far
don't need
from
all men to
like,
do it. We only
I
need
don't know, how
quite
we're
a
meant to
few
live
to still
in
do just as
community
much
with each
damage.
other and in the
Hmm.
tribe. I mean, we have like it's disturbing and it's
Hmm.
detrimental. And we're all fucking sick because of it.
Right. Yes. Right. He goes to work. All hail that boy. He goes to work. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. And I empathize with part of it for sure. Keep going.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Mhm. Mhm. It is. And yes, and you mentioned, I think actually the most dangerous thing men have done is that because they were in power for so long, because they were centered for so long, because their perspectives were the only thing anyone was hearing, including men from other men, it was almost never really truly understanding the lives, values, and perspectives of women. Men have gotten to define what is important. They're setting the standard. They're saying, "Oh,
Yes.
well, what you do is not
Totally
that
agree with
important. What I do, the paid labor, oh, that's important." Or like, men have gotten to decide for primarily too, what is the most valuable? What is our most valuable thing? Well, oh, this
totally
hedge
agree.
fund manager over here, he's making a lot of money, so it's most valuable. And you're like, are you kidding me? Our farmers are much more valuable than a single hedge fund manager ever will be. Like our teachers do more to contribute to society than a CEO ever will. But yet men have gotten to define what is important. And then when you resist that narrative, they call you crazy, when really they've never experienced a co-created world. So when I'm saying I had empathy earlier for them, I have empathy because I think even men who are trying, there's not a roadmap. They don't get to look to the past. That idea of what I said earlier, that like humans are a watch and learn species, they have no one to watch and learn. And that is, trying to fabricate something from scratch is really, really difficult. So I will give them that, though there are models if they would be willing to listen to women. Just like I think our liberation is all tied up with each other. And I've gotten most of the language. I've gotten most of, I'm most well known for having a bad marriage online. If you look at my content on Instagram, my husband and I have struggled in our marriage. The language I used to liberate myself, set boundaries, and begin to change my marriage was language I learned from Black women. Because Black folks have been on the front lines of what liberation and equity looks like for centuries now. They've had to. They have not had the luxury of opting out. And now they are teaching, and I listened to Black women, and my life got, oh my gosh, immeasurably better. And now men would have to have the humility to listen to women.
I feel like everything leads back to their inability to express their emotion, or their feeling that it is weakness if they do.
And the hard part
have
about
emotion
a cultural prison,
and they express
it exists outside of you, and it exists inside.
What
of you.
is that?
And the hardest part
it's
about
like toxic masculinity.
But when it exists in both those places, inside the narrative that you've constructed is in you and outside of you, it is so hard to know that you can walk through the door. But women are familiar with that, right? We have flexed the muscle of that because we were told we couldn't work. We were told we were less smart. We were told we couldn't manage money. We were told all of these things. And women have had to systematically walk through the door anyway. So women have flexed that muscle and gained that knowledge of their own, the awareness of their own humanity in ways men have not had to do. Because everything in the society made sure that they didn't really have to, wasn't valued. And even now that's true. For men to walk through those doors, they'll be doing subversive work. They'll be having to go against so many narratives they were talking about what it means to be a good man. And I really do believe most men want to be good men. I really believe that. I really do. They want to be good men. But right now, in order to really start to do that, it's mostly subverting culture. It will be mostly going against the things they've been taught, which is really hard to do. Yes.
I totally agree.
Oh, it exists in white people though too, and all people. I think there can be a self-hatred. I mean, the term hurt people exists for a reason. Like these unexplored portions of our lives, these unexplored insecurities end up being places where we end up externalizing those hurts onto others. I think for me, this goes back to like white, Protestant, colonialistic, Christian mainly ideas. These ideas that a human is a shameful thing. By the way, I grew up super conservative Christian. I still am a person of faith. I attend church every week. So for anyone to come on and be like, this lady is against us. I'm like, I'm not against you. I'm actually one of you. Jesus is a hard act to follow, but I do try on many occasions. So I'm not saying this out of a hatred for Christians, but Christians have been taught their whole lives that you are inherently sinful, that the human flesh is inherently bad. And the funny part is that is such a pervasive idea in America that I talk to people who grew up agnostic or people who grew up atheist. And that cultural concept that humans are at their core bad exists in almost everybody. That teaching is so perversive. People don't realize how much they've been influenced by the roots of church. You have been a branch growing up on the roots of church, whether you know it or not.
I'm a Southern Baptist minister's daughter.
And I think that's
I'm on only
collective.
My dad we
hold this collective belief, and you have to honestly make the decision to step out of that belief. That I don't think I'm inherently bad. I don't think humans are inherently bad.
My dad just discovered last.
I don't believe I even follow a God that believes
past
that.
week that I was on OnlyFans.
Anyway, but it's tricky, and I think because men have sat.
He asked me to take it down, and
blind.
I said no. I've been exploited my entire life for my sexuality, for men's pleasure. This is my space. I get to own
So
this.
it's
You don't get to
sometimes,
tell
and
me what
I
to
would
do.
love to say that I'm this
And
really
I've
magnanimous
said that to
person,
my
but I
children.
grew up
I'm
on
like,
poverty, on
I'm
welfare. I
never
was
going to let another
overweight as a
man
kid,
tell
and
me
these
what
are,
to do with my
I'm
body
super
ever
white, blonde
again.
haired white. I'm not
And I
saying I'm
had
not
this
privileged.
great
I'm at the
hatred for
top
my
of the
body
notch when
for
it
a
comes to
long
privileges.
time because I
But I've
knew
sat
that
in spaces where I know for
women
sure
were
I was treated
envious and
differently
men wanted it.
because of my
And
status. I'm very well aware that we
it
don't have an
makes you
equitable
feel real
society
gross
that's
in
out
this
here with
society.
roses and
Like,
bunnies treating
but
people.
when you know that you're a
I'll never forget
spirit,
the
I
first
mean,
year I lost a
this
lot
is
of
what I
weight. It
believe.
was like I
I'm a
lived in a
little
whole
out there
different
when it comes to
universe. The
spirituality,
way
but
people treated
if
me, not
you
just men, but
believe
women
that
as
you
well.
chose to be in this
Um,
body because
and
you
we all
had
think that
certain
we're just
lessons that
like,
you
oh,
needed
just
to
because we've
learn
declared people are equal
on
or
your
we've
journey
declared everyone
through
has the
this
same
really
rights,
fucking weird
that somehow
humanity
the unwritten
experience,
rules
then
aren't still
you have to
wildly
learn to
impacting
embrace your body.
the
I chose this
decisions we
for a
make every
reason
day
because there are
about how we treat
lessons that I
others and
have
even
to
how we treat
learn
ourselves.
that I can only learn in this body.
Hmm.
And it helps you not hate it, you know? It
Okay.
applies to everything. I think I've
I'm a
probably
Church of
been a
Christ girl.
black
Maybe you know
woman
what the
at
Church
some
of
point in
Christ
my
is.
life because I love them
I don't
so
go there
much. I
anymore,
would follow
but
them
I grew up
around.
in the
In
Church of
fact, I
Christ. I don't go there
did
anymore.
for a good part of my life. I had this group of black women that I just would go to their house and hang out with them because I loved them so much. So I think, I don't know, from that perspective, and people have forgotten that we're like spirits in human bodies very briefly, right? But at the end of the day, you're just a fucking spirit and we're all in this together,
Ooh.
in my opinion. Yes. Okay.
I'll never forget the first year I lost a lot of weight. It was like I lived in a whole different universe. The way people treated me, not just men, but women as well. Um, and we all think that we're just like, oh, just because we've declared people are equal or we've declared everyone has the same rights, that somehow the unwritten rules aren't still wildly impacting the decisions we make every day about how we treat others and even how we treat ourselves.
Oh,
Hmm. Okay. I'm a Church of Christ girl. Maybe you know what the Church of Christ is. I don't go there anymore, but I grew up in the Church of
it's
Christ. I
so
don't go there anymore.
true. So yes. And that's yes. And I think that was a tool
Ooh.
also for patriarchy to pit us against ourselves, you know. Now I have this beautiful friend that's taught me so much about loving your body. And she's like, I just use my hands to wash my body and I just like pray over it and feel it. And I mean, it's like what we have been so disconnected. And that is maybe the greatest tool that they used against us was to hate ourselves. Oh, fuck, that lands.
Mm.
Yep, yep,
Mhm. Mm.
yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What you just did.
Yeah. Well, and the idea, like, so for instance,
Yes,
even
I
if you
got it.
didn't hold the belief that,
Yep.
your spirit chose a body, the idea that you would stand in opposition to your own body throughout the course of your life. I mean, how much energy is it to stand in tension with your own self? Sorry, my door just blew open. I'm going to close it really quick. Um, to be in, it's so funny. I have three sweatshirts on. I said I had a fever at the beginning. I'm really cold, so I look like the a Michelin man, but I love it. I had an eating disorder when I was younger, and I like really have this beautiful recovery, and the recovery was building a relationship to my body that wasn't antagonistic. I had to learn to love it. And the work of loving your body is not work for you. The crazy part is when you really learn to love your body for all that it has and maybe all that it doesn't have, you love others so much better. I love the community so much more generously. I love others. The grace I have, the perspective I have, the curiosity I have about other bodies that aren't mine, because now I have found a profound love, accepting, and grace for my own body. Um, it was, you know what I mean? Like, so regardless of what you believe, love for your body should be something we all strive for. Um, oh, oh yeah.
I find you incredibly fascinating, and we're like friends for life now. I'm gonna just follow you around. When I saw your content on on TikTok, I was like, this woman must be divorced. And then I did some research and
Oh yeah.
realized you had like made a shift, I guess, and
I
you were
mean,
married. So you
it's
want
easy
to
to
talk about
control
that?
someone
I
who's
know I'm
hungry.
totally
You know what
switching
I'm
gears.
saying? I mean,
Yeah.
the idea that you would constantly have women being thinner and thinner and
Okay.
thinner and thinner and skinny. And I think I actually look at women in older generations, and I think of like specifically the fat, the trends, not the fat, the low fat diets of like the 80s and 90s. Low fat, low fat. Don't eat eggs, they're bad for you. Don't eat butter, it's bad for you. Everything is low fat. Well, the brain is like almost entirely made of fat, and you cannot have higher level brain functions if you are not consuming fats. The brain feeds on carbs and it feeds on fat because that's what it's made of. Proteins go to lots of other parts of your body, but fat actually and carbs are brain food. And I look at women in generations above me who sometimes I don't relate with or connect with, and I sometimes wonder, you spent the better part of your formative body years literally starving yourself. I think this has had an effect on how your brain's operating. Now, I don't say that out loud, but I literally will have. I don't. When I'm looking at a woman, I'm struggling to connect with. I should say, this will happen generationally sometimes, and I'm like, oh wow, like you spent the 80s and the 90s while you were having kids. First of all, having kids is this incredible strain on your body nutritionally. I was a birth doula. We talked about it. I've actually been a fitness instructor and done nutrition work with people. Anyway, so I have all these weird knowledges. The way that your body needs really high calories and high nutrition, high proteins, high fats in that season of giving birth and postpartum and nursing. And we had generations of women. My grandmother smoked 2 packs a day to stay skinny, even while she was pregnant, because it was so important as a 1950s, 1960s housewife that she was thin, right? It was more important that she be thin and than she be healthy, right? And so it's so much easier to control women whose brain function isn't even at its highest level because, like, the basic components we need for high functioning are literally absent. And women were doing it to themselves to try to conform to a standard that was necessary for their survival, right? If a woman wasn't pleasing a man, he could withdraw his financial, like he was bringing the finances, and she had not a way to pursue those in the same way. So it was literally her life or death. So we like look at women like, oh, shame on women for doing all this. Like, no, 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 no. Like she was trying to survive in a system that purposely put her in a very poor position. Anyway, I could talk. I have a lot of high horses I could sit on all day, as it turns out, just with these ideas. Oh my gosh. Yes, I love it. Uh-huh. We could talk about that. Marriage 2.0. No, let's switch them. Yeah, so my partner and I, we married for 20 years, and I would say around
Mhm.
year 10, 11, 12, because we had kids really soon. So we were married for 3 years, had 4 kids in just under 6 years. So the first 10 years was like newlyweds having
Yep.
babies. And right as I was
Yep.
coming out of the fog of having babies, it was just so clear to me um, just how just equitable and terrible our marriage was. So I was trying to start bringing this up. I did care about him. I did love him, but I was like, listen, I can't stay
Right.
in the version of this marriage we currently have. So we're going to need to evolve. And he did not see it. He did not understand it. He'd never heard it, right? He'd never seen a man or a woman talk about these things I was discussing. And so eventually I stopped talking, and I had the realization like, well, we're going to be divorced in about 10 years. It's fine. I've been a stay-at-home mom. I got to get on this whole activity of providing for myself, because that's where we're headed. I'm going to be providing for myself. And I was like, I can't get him to engage in a conversation in good faith with me. At that time, it was really difficult. It always devolved into like defensiveness and arguing. I would try to share podcasts or a book with him. I was like, can we both listen to this and discuss it? I was really trying hard to draw him into our marriage, not push him out of it. So then I went through years of quiet. And it's so funny because men were like, came out of nowhere. I'm like, oh, if your woman went through years of silence, buddy boy, you have hit, your marriage is over. If she got quiet, this is when your marriage is actually just about ended. So I got quiet. I started making plans, although I did like him and love him a lot. I knew he was completely clueless. And I was like, I would just say, hey, yeah, when the kids are out of the house and we're divorced, I would literally talk about our future that way. He's like, wait a minute, what? And at first when I would say that, he would sweep it under the rug. He's like, I don't want to talk about that. Or like that, you're just joking. And I was like, I'm not joking, buddy. Like nothing about my face says I'm not serious. But I was like, whatever you have to tell yourself to survive the day. I don't care anymore, to be honest. All I'm doing for you, this is a nicety, a polite courtesy of me to continually remind you of where your life is going. I'm saying it in the clearest language I know, which is someday when we're divorced. And so that went on like maybe 2 years. And we ended up having, and I was, part of the problem in our marriage was I was never belligerent. I was never vindictive. I never screamed and yelled. Oh, I did sometimes. I'm never not a yeller, but the types of things, I think what he pictured when a marriage is falling apart was this like violent devolving, where we just don't like each other anymore. And we're not having sex, because I like sex. We're still having sex here and there. There's a lot of our sex life I actually really hated. And I started to opt out of it. I was like, no, I hate that. Not doing it anymore. And he was like so jarred. He was like, oh, but it's a long story short, but he also grew up in very conservative Christianity and realized one of the ways that had hurt him was he had never taken the time to understand his own sexuality or even the language of what he even likes in sex. And he, up until his mid-30s, did not realize he still hung on to the belief. Because I grew up in a conservative Christian culture where even talking about sex was considered sinful or shameful outside of marriage. So that even when my husband got married, he didn't know how to turn that off. He's on the autism spectrum. So there's like very linear modes that people on the spectrum can have. And that was one of his modes. Like, sex is dirty, sex is wrong. I'm not even allowed to talk about it. But now that I'm married, I'm allowed to do it. But a terrible sex life. Can you imagine not really knowing how to talk about it and then having good sex? Like what? Anyway, so in our mid-30s here, I'm getting ready to peace out. But once again, it doesn't look terrible. If you were looking out the outside, you're like, these people co-parent. These people have their moments. But yeah, there's no screaming. There's no yelling. And I didn't hate him. Oh, I did not hate him. In fact, I really, really felt him to be a dear human being, but also knew that if I continued to be in proximity to him, it would continue to harm me. And I could not maintain self-respect and allow myself to continue and knowingly be harmed, because that was what's going to happen. He did not know how to change to be a person who wasn't harming me. Anyway, we go on a date night. Once again, I'm in that phase where I'm like, hey, can we listen to this podcast together? At this particular time, I wanted to listen to this podcast to introduce this idea in parenting, something we were struggling with in parenting. I'm like, hey, I think this might give us language to kind of see this thing a different way. We're entering this new phase of parenting, and I think we're both struggling with it, but maybe he was like, nah, I don't really want to listen to that one. Why don't we listen to this one? And like so many other occasions, I just learned not to fight, right? Because I was like, probably I won't convince him, and I'm tired and I don't really care anymore. Sure, whatever, dude, let's listen to your podcast. And we did. And in that podcast, they ended up discussing something that was the most tender pain in our marriage.
Yeah.
And it has to do with the decision we made years ago not to move. We made the decision and mostly him made the decision not to move, to be closer to family, to have support. And like literally every day I have thought about that decision. There's not a day that goes by that I don't feel the pain of it, because we have raised our children in isolation and it is excruciating. I could go into that another time. Anyway, this podcast, unbeknownst to him, brings up that exact topic, the one he picked. And I couldn't hold it back. I just start sobbing, the type of sobs that you can't even talk through. I couldn't even say words. Like, this is the biggest pain of our whole life and our whole marriage. And the fact that this podcast brought it up, I was trying to hold it back. I was like, and he kind of knew it because once again, I had tried to tell him, but he would not listen. Um, but he had never seen, once again, because he didn't see me yelling, didn't see me crying, didn't see me screaming, never assumed how bad it hurt me. And for the very first time, he was like, oh my God, I did not know this was hurting you like this. And I was like, I've told you. And he's like, I know you've told me. But for some reason, seeing you in pain is the first time like empathy really uploaded for me, which is just sad that I think a lot of men work that way. And I was like, whether or not you upload it right now, I don't give a
I
shit.
love that so
Like,
much.
I'm so sorry.
It gives
You're
me so
coming to
much
this marriage
hope.
that
You
is
know, I
already
was in
mostly dead.
an affair. I don't know if you've seen any
And
of
now
my
that you're
stuff,
seeing
but
my pain,
I
I'm relieved
reconnected with
because
an
I
old
think now we'll
college
get
boyfriend
divorced
who was
sooner.
married, and
And I'm so
I
relieved that
firmly
I
thought
don't
that
have
he
to
was
pretend
going to leave
this
his
marriage
wife,
is
that
fine.
this was like an exit
And ironically, we
ramp
were
to
supposed to be
his
going to a
marriage,
comedy
and
show
it didn't
that
end
was
up
an hour,
being
2
that.
hours away.
And I think because
And
when he
we
saw
arrived
the
at this
pain,
comedy
what you
show.
said
Both of us have
about
been in a car
when he saw the pain on
weeping
his
our
wife's face,
eyes
what he
out
had done to
for
her,
2
he could
straight
not do
hours.
it.
Our
And
eyes
I
are
think
practically
men,
swollen shut.
like,
I cannot tell
we
you
don't
how funny
change
this is looking
unless
back.
we're
We
in a
walk into
great
this
amount of
comedy
pain,
venue, and
right?
everyone else is like drinking,
And you're
ready to
like
have a good time. We're
encouraged
watching a
to
stand-up
change your
comedian,
systems
and everyone's
and
like
all
looking
the
at us like,
things. And
oh my God.
now I went
Like,
through
and
this
we
like
walk in like so
marriage
wrecked, and here
sucks.
I
I think
am. I
everybody
thought I
should
would
get
leave this
divorced, blah blah blah.
event
Now
and
I'm
this
like,
time
hold
like
them tight.
finally
It
maybe
is
getting
so
a
hard being
divorce.
single.
And he left the event because he
It's
realized,
like it's so
oh my gosh,
hard.
the
So I
realization of
would,
divorce being
I
real
don't
is a
know.
relief for
I'm an
Jaime,
advocate
and
for
it
you to
is
stay together.
devastating to me. I will lose everything that matters to me. I am madly in love with you. I am madly in love with our family.
Yeah, sure.
And I will lose everything if you go. And I was like, I honestly don't care anymore. I'm so sorry you feel that way, but I have grieved this for the last decade. I have been
That's
sad
right.
for a decade, and I've been trying to tell you for a decade. And no matter what I said or how I presented it, it didn't really click for you. But you're welcome to do work.
I'm out.
I just know that this may not fix our marriage.
Right.
Just like I love that for you, that you're having this growth moment. But just so you know, this may not save it. And anyway,
I love it.
there's been growth and over the last 4/5 years, things. If you had showed me who he is right now 10 years ago, would have thought you were a liar. I would have like, he makes videos on TikTok too. His account is actually much more popular than mine, about how he's grown as a husband, the way he has turned on his brain to be in tune with his family, all these things, which you're like, as a woman, you're just like so confused about why this is revolutionary, but for apparently a lot of men it is. And anyway, his growing, if you had showed me one of these TikTok videos, I would have thrown that phone across the room and be like, I don't know this guy. I do not know that man. He looks like my husband, but I don't know him. Because it's just, the change has been so wildly different. And there are still parts of our marriage we are still healing, like actively. I totally get why people walk away from each other. Right. To heal next to the person, the people that have hurt each other this terribly is oh God, it's hard. I don't even know that I'd recommend it, to be honest. We talk on TikTok about our marriage, but I tell people all the time, I'm like, I don't know that this isn't an advertisement for you to keep working on your marriage, quite frankly, because it is excruciating. There are times when it's so excruciating, but we are finding some really unbelievable healing that I never thought possible. No. Mm, mm. Yeah.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. It's Yeah, and we actually, and people have big feelings about other people's marriages, I've learned. Um, and Oh, also, one of the things
Totally
people assume
agree.
is
Oh
that one
my,
of the hardships in our marriage was infidelity, but
I
it
enjoyed
hasn't
this
been.
so
Neither one of
much.
us has
Please
even
don't go
considered
anywhere.
another
But
person.
what a
And to be quite
fucking
frankly, this
great
marriage has been so hard.
conversation. I'm going to
Neither one of
stop
us in a million
recording
years.
though.
Like, if
You're the
this were to end
best.
tomorrow,
Any
we're
last
both like,
words
oh
before
my God, this has
tell
been
us
so
where to
hard.
find you
We
on
never
all
want
the
to put ourselves through
platforms?
this ever again. And we both feel that way. This isn't just one of us. But we actually plan on, when our kids are all grown, having a period of time where we live apart. Maybe I go abroad and he lives in a place he's always wanted to live. Not permanently, but like actually like a marriage sabbatical. We both kind of look forward to that. We've considered even getting a 2-family home where we have separate
Okay.
living quarters, but have like communal spaces we get to share, but get to have some of our own space.
Okay.
And maybe we try that for a season and maybe we go back to a one house. There's all these ways in which we're conceptualizing our marriage in the future that I know a lot of people
Okay.
don't
I
conceptualize
love it
marriage.
so much.
We
Oh
we
my God,
both
you're
like
amazing.
both. I should emphasize both.
Okay, don't go anywhere.
When I say this, sometimes men are like,